For 17 years, Stock Car Steel has been a leading materials supplier to the racing industry. We're proud they're a Motorsports content partner here at Race Chaser Online. The biggest names in NASCAR trust Stock Car Steel for raw materials such as carbon steel, chrome moly, DOM, aluminum, plastics, and much more. You can't build a race car without the basic materials, and Stock Car Steel is the place to get them. Don't forget to also visit Stock Car Steel's sister company, SRI Supplies, for racing and industry. SRI is the place to go for all your shop supply needs. Nuts, bolts, rivets, tapes, adhesives, cutting tools, chemicals, body shop supplies, paint shop supplies, lubricants, and more. A well-stocked race shop is a winning race shop, and the path to winning begins with 3 letters, SRI. For more information, visit stockcarsteel.com or SRI-supplies.com. Check them both out on Facebook or call them toll-free at 1-888-752-7272, 1-888-752-7272.
Hey guys, what's up?
Hey Dale, I got your text that said you couldn't text.
Wait, what? Why would he text that he couldn't text?
I was driving.
Well, why not just not text instead of texting you can't text?
I didn't text.
It was just a text saying that he couldn't text.
So who actually texted the text that he couldn't text?
Dale.
The Sprint Drive First app blocks and replies to texts while you drive. We can live without the and.
I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker.
You're listening to Speed77 Radio,
Powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports.
Good evening, race fans, and welcome once again to a brand new Monday night edition of Motorsports Madness here for the first time on Shoutcast Online Radio. We are glad that you are along for the ride here this evening and glad that you have chosen this evening to spend with us as we go through a little bit more than an hour of motorsports news, views, and interviews from around the entire world of motorsports. I'm Jacob Seelman, and we're glad to have you along for the ride here this evening at the round table. I'm joined by my colleague Tom Baker as we get set to take a look through the entire world of motorsports. And Tom, first off, it's nice to be on a brand new platform here on Shoutcast Online Radio tonight, and I'm glad that we have a ton of motorsports news to talk about here this evening.
Yeah, me too. It's definitely great to be on Shoutcast. This has been something that we've been working toward for a while now. It's just step one in a series of steps designed to upgrade our radio broadcasts that we do here on Race Chaser Online and Speed77 Radio, and certainly significant step because now we have a static link where everyone can just book it as a favorite and go there every time the show is on. The link will be exactly the same, and eventually we will have a page on the Race Chaser website as well that will be a radio shows page. People will be able to go there and find out when we are live, but this certainly is a golden opportunity for us now to kind of make it a little easier for folks to find us, and of course Shoutcast, one of the top online audio broadcast platforms. So just a fantastic evening for us here to be on the Shoutcast platform, and we're thankful for that and looking forward to a fantastic show.
So let's dive right in here as we start our first show tonight. March 17th, and boy, I was a little worried that we were going to be able to start this show the way we needed to, Tom, because it looked a little hairy for a while that we were going to end up having a Monday afternoon NASCAR Sprint Cup Series race. A little bit interesting. We ultimately got it in on Sunday, but not without a lot of storylines, a lot of drama, and ultimately drama all the way up to the checkered flag.
Yeah, that's to say the least, and it was definitely a unique race in many ways. But yeah, it almost was a Monday race, and thankfully it didn't have to come to that. But it's good that everyone could get out of there last night and get back home and get to work today. And by the way, we should say Happy St. Patrick's Day to everyone in our listening audience, and we hope that if you're enjoying some green beer that you will do so responsibly, and if you're going to be driving anywhere, hand the keys to someone who's enjoying a less potent green beverage, such as I am with my Diet Mountain Dew, as we start the show off. But corned beef, cabbage, whatever your St. Patrick's Day fare is, we hope you're enjoying it. What a race yesterday it was. Carl Edwards won it, with a question mark, but it certainly wasn't quite the ending that I think he was expecting or anyone was expecting, and I know that we're going to get into that a little bit later on.
Yeah, we are. We'll get to the ending in a minute, but let's start off with the beginning here. Always a good place to start, the top of the race, and a race that was actually delayed by about 2 hours because of Mother Nature, who made her appearance known quite loudly several times throughout the course of the day. Denny Hamlin, with a brand new track record of virtually 130 miles an hour, sat on the pole and led the field to the green flag. And up front early, we had about 7 different leaders. Joey Logano, Brad Keselowski, Jimmy Johnson, Hamlin, all took turns at the front. But Tom, none of those early leaders were without problems, and we saw a really big problem just before the first red flag of the afternoon. Jimmy Johnson losing a right front tire, getting up out of the groove nearly into the wall, and that really ended his day.
That was the strangest situation I've seen with a tire in a long time. I mean, that tire literally shredded itself.
Yeah, it did. It literally just shredded that right front, letting go. Jimmy Johnson ended up trapped 3 laps down. He ultimately would finish 2 laps in arrears to the leaders at the checkered flag, and I believe 19th position Jimmy Johnson ends his day. So a very rough day for the 6-time NASCAR Sprint Cup Series champion. But of course, with this new point system, you can have a bad race because all you need to do is win. And after the red flag, which delayed the race until prime time, Sunday night prime time, and we saw the first of what will be 2 night races now at Bristol Motor Speedway. We had 375 laps under the lights, Tom, and when we went back to green, boy, we thought it was a good show before the lights came on. After the lights came on, I don't know how we had any cars finish.
It sure did become a typical Bristol show, didn't it? I mean, you had cars 3 wide, cars getting into the back of each other, cars smashing each other coming out of the pits. I mean, goodness gracious. It was certainly a fantastic race. And you know what? There's a lot to be said for the whole prime time thing because, of course, the track conditions change. And yesterday was obviously a unique circumstance because they had so much rain there. And so it surely was a completely different racetrack than what you'd even race on normally at night. But the track is just so much different. The temperature is cooler no matter where you're at. It's cooler than it is during the day with a hot sun, and the track, a lot of the asphalt tracks tend to tighten up more at night, so it just changes the handling and makes it a little more racy a lot of times, and I think everyone appreciates the value of a night race, although I enjoy the mid-afternoon races, especially this time of year, because generally the temperature is a little bit more fan-friendly.
Yeah, it is generally a little bit more fan-friendly, but, we made the best of it, and the lights came on, and the action went 3 wide, and in some cases, I don't know how they managed to do it, but virtually 4 wide, and we saw on about lap 180 when the second competition yellow of the race came out after the first rain delay, Tom. We saw Matt Kenseth, who got the lead from Kurt Busch, and then the caution comes out, and then Timmy Hill showed up.
Yeah, not sure what to make of that. I didn't see or hear of any explanation from Timmy on that one, and it just seemed like the throttle stuck for a moment, or I'm not sure. But boy, that was a scary situation. He just plowed the back of Matt Kenseth, and certainly, that could have been much worse than it ended up being. But not really sure what was going on there, nor am I really sure what Danica was doing when she came out of the pits and just dive bombed. Well, that's not even a good word to use. Basically, it just drove into the back of Clip Boyer. I just am not sure what was going on there. It was just it was a strange night last night, Jacob, and I think sometimes that's just the combination of all of those. You rain delay, then you start, then you rain delay, then you start. I mean, everybody's. I think drivers will tell you that they don't get fatigued or don't kind of get out of their zone or out of their rhythm. But I've got to believe that sometimes by that point in the day, all it takes is just a split second on the reaction time or whatever, and strange things happen. But I'm not sure about either of those incidents. They were both very strange to me.
Yeah, they were, and the race, while it was strange at that point, would get even stranger, because you know what? After a beat and battered and bruised race car, back end mostly, from Timmy Hill, what did Matt Kenseth do? Matt Kenseth came in, his Joe Gibbs Racing team repaired that number 20 Husky Tools Toyota. Matt Kenseth restarted 29th, and Matt Kenseth proceeded to charge his way through the field and was up to 4th by lap 275 when another caution came out for Ryan Truex getting up into the fence. And Tom, we saw those marbles be a major issue all night long, guys getting up into the loose stuff, and basically once those are on your tires, it takes about 2 or 3 laps for them to get cleaned off again, and at that point you're back 10, 15, 20 spots.
Yeah, that's true. And again, with the track condition being what it was as a result of all the rain, I think that probably accented that even more. And, Bristol is such a fast little track anyways. That was definitely an ongoing issue last night, and I don't think that's really much different than normal. And I found it interesting just to sort of scale back a little bit and make a general observation about the reaction to last night's Bristol race. I found it interesting that there were so many people on social media last night who seemed to be so frustrated with that race and so down on it as if it wasn't a good race. And yet, it was probably the closest thing in terms of action and excitement and drivers being almost over aggressive. Was the closest thing to an old Bristol race that there's been in quite some time. I think most of the last several Bristol races, last handful or so, for the most part, have been a little bit more tame than what we're used to seeing out of Bristol. This one was anything but that.
Yeah, it was anything but, Tom, and it was really, really, I asked myself a couple times, is there a full moon out tonight? I had to look at my calendar to realize that there wasn't. But, the full moon makes drivers do funny things, so we couldn't blame it on that. But, we talk about Matt Kenseth and his meteoric return through the field, and he held the lead until just about lap 400, and we saw a couple of guys who were, pretty good at Bristol. Kyle and Kurt Busch, who have 10 Cup wins combined between the two of them, get together around about lap 400 and really took both of them out of contention. A shame for those two, especially after Kyle won the nationwide race. And, we see the Busch brothers go down, and we see some other cream rise to the top, and we saw Kevin Harvick get around Matt Kenseth on pit road after that caution.
Yeah, the whole last portion of the race was just very, very strange. I mean, you think Kurt and Kyle obviously are two guys that should contend for wins, but as the race kept going from there, by the end of it, it became a Ford fest. and a couple of guys that you would not have expected to necessarily see at the front of the field started to creep their way up there with Ricky Stenhouse and Eric Almirola. And Carl Edwards is a guy I think that you know can win anywhere he runs, but Ricky's had some good runs in the Cup car, but this was by far his best race, and it would have been real interesting. We'll get to this in a minute, but I would be real interested to have seen what might have happened if we'd actually had a green, white, checkered finish there at the end that hadn't started raining. But certainly it was just the last probably third of the race or so, just a lot of things happening that you wouldn't necessarily expect to, and it was good to see some new guys running for the win.
Yeah, it really was. You know, you have these guys like Ricky Stenhouse, like Eric Almirola. We saw Marcos Ambrose in the top 5. You know, we can't call him a new guy by any stretch, but we saw some guy named Tony Stewart up in the top 5. I mean, what's up with that? The guys had terrible luck to start the first 3 races of the season, and we get to Bristol, a track that he hates, a track where we've seen him get into scuffles with guys, where he's chucked a helmet at Matt Kenseth's car. He hates Bristol, and he ends up running in the top 5 the last 100 laps, and almost mounted a charge for the win after he, Carl Edwards, and everybody in about that top 6 stayed out. I mean, we saw guys get eaten up on old tires, but somehow Carl Edwards and the gang made it work there in the final run.
Yeah, and again, to see some of those guys up there racing for the win, and especially to see the Petty Motorsports cars both up there and both in contention, that was a real nice surprise, I think, for a lot of people. And it just goes to show that anymore in NASCAR Sprint Cup, you just never know who's going to be around at the end or who's going to be contending. I really think this race was, I think it was a great race, and I think it was an example of how the Gen 6 cars with the changes that were made over the winter. And even in the qualifying, I mean, this was the first time I'd had the chance to actually watch the knockout qualifying, and I was actually surprised at how how well it went, how non-eventful it was, and I think everybody likes to bash NASCAR. That's really popular, and it's an easy thing to do for most fans because, frankly, most of them have never had any experience on the inside of the sport and honestly don't have a clue what goes into the things that NASCAR has to do in a day, and especially on a race day. But everyone has a right to their feelings. But I think this was a good example of NASCAR's changes that they made over the winter. In a lot of ways, this weekend played out to be, I think the racing by and large this season has been really good. The qualifying seems to be going well. I mean, it's kind of hard to argue with what's going on in the Sprint Cup Series right now. There's a lot of excitement, and it's, now Carl Edwards is in the chase, so now we get to see he and his crew chief, Jimmy Fennig, really start doing some unique things in the pits, I'm sure, pardon me, over the winter, over the rest of the summer, I should say, trying to win some more races, and Jimmy is a bit of a gambler anyway. So I think this again, it's making it fun to watch from week to week.
Yeah, it really is, and I'm really enjoying watching these guys take these risks and take these gambles because they know it doesn't do you near as much good anymore to finish second, to finish third. You want to be leading, you want to win these races, and these guys who are gambling, staying out on late race pit stops, or gambling on fuel, or whatever it is, it's impressive. And Carl Edwards goes to victory lane. He had a 2-second lead with 2.5 laps to go. A caution came out, and that was the subject, even after Carl Edwards won the race. I mean, we knew he was going to win it anyways. It wasn't like Stenhouse or Almirola was anywhere close, but this has sparked the talk of the tinfoil hat-wearing people of, caution gate and all these other things. And, Tom, I hate mystery caution flags, but this one was just bizarre.
Well, I think I think it was just a mistake. I mean, again, people, it's so easy from behind a keyboard to bash, and everybody's an authority on everything, even though, most of the race fans don't, like I said, they don't really have the slightest clue what goes on behind the scenes at a race, and I'm not bashing the fans. I mean, I've been as vocal and critical of NASCAR at times as anybody, and I think that's fair. Again, I think we're all entitled to our feelings and entitled to our opinions, but it sounds like this time it was just simply a mistake. One of the flagmen, probably moved the wrong way or something and hit the manual override switch in the flag stand that's there basically so that if the flagman sees something dire before the track, that he can hit the caution flag and the caution lights. And I think that's, that sounds like it's what happened, and it is what it is. It would have been okay. They would have simply restarted and done a green-white checkered, which, all right. So then if Stenhouse wins, somebody would argue, well, Carl would have won. You didn't want him to win or whatever. I don't know. You don't like, NASCAR doesn't like Cheez-Its. I don't know what the deal would be. But, they'd find some excuse. But the fact is, it could have been remedied by a restart. And NASCAR could have done whatever they felt was necessary to do. But it rained. And, it is what it is. Honestly, this was probably the best outcome because Carl was ahead by 2 seconds. So the fact that we didn't have a restart, the rain basically almost saved it because, again, Carl was the one most severely affected by it. He had a 2-second lead. So, it should have been Carl's race. And, it is what it is. It was a strange deal, and I'm sure NASCAR will try to figure out if there's some way they can, but you can't really, I don't think you can take away the flagman's ability to have that override because, again, I think, if he sees a car flipping down the middle of the backstretch before before the folks in the tower see it, I mean, they're, busy policing a lot of other things. I mean, I think you got to keep that in the flagman's power, and, you just try to maybe locate it somehow so that it's a little harder to accidentally trip. It just is a bizarre situation, but probably fairly easily explainable, and people just need to calm down. Everybody's human. Everybody screws up. Carl still won the race. It made for an interesting ending and something we'll talk about for years to come, I'm sure.
Yeah, we will. Just like jet dryers and track potholes and you name it. But Carl Edwards wins. Ricky Stenhouse and Eric Almirola finish second and third, each notch career best NASCAR Sprint Cup Series finishes. Stewart fourth, Ambrose fifth. We watch now Carl Edwards basically get a free pass into the chase for the NASCAR Sprint Cup with the victory. And, we saw Kevin Harvick, whose engine just exploded more or less into a ball of fire, go out with about 50 laps to go. Harvick drives that car to the garage. I thought he was crazy, but gets out of that car, and the fire crew goes a little overboard on that car. But, things happen in the interest of safety, and Kevin was okay. The car wasn't, but in the meantime, he still has a win, too, that pretty much will guarantee him a spot in the chase. So all's pretty well that ends well. And we go to Fontana, California next week, where the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series may see a couple of feuds rekindled, Tom, but we'll talk a little bit more about that here later on in the show. We're going to get to some nationwide series and other action from over the weekend after a caution flag. We'll be right back. You're listening to Speed77 Radio and Race Chaser Online, and we return after these words. Stay with us.
Packers,
Vikings,
Red State,
Blue State.
We come from different places.
Uptown,
Downtown.
We come to different conclusions.
half empty,
Half full.
But no matter how different we are, we're all connected, and we can all make a difference. That's why United Way brings people, expertise, and resources together to improve the education, income, and health of our communities, the building blocks for a better life. When we live united, our efforts, magnified by others, add up to real change. Children succeed in school, families gain financial stability, the health of our neighbors improves, and suddenly, so do our communities. But real change won't happen without you.
Live united.
So let's look beyond our differences.
Live united.
One by one, let's make a difference. Let's reach out a hand to one and influence the condition of all.
Live united.
Give, advocate, volunteer. Live United. Sign up today at liveunited.org. Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker.
You're listening to Speed77 Radio,
Powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports.
Welcome back to Motorsports Madness here on Speed77 Radio and Race Chaser Online. Jacob Seelman, Tom Baker here around the round table tonight. And Tom, let me tell you what. Before we move to Nationwide Series action, and we're going to talk about this guy in the Nationwide Series race recap too, but you wanted to bring him up. So how about Kyle Larson? The kid gets a top 10 finish in the Cup Series, finishes second in the Nationwide race again. All of a sudden, I don't want to say it was Juan Pablo Montoya. I would never speculate like that, but Kyle Larson seems to have revived that 42 car, and Chip Ganassi Racing, Jamie McMurray had a strong run too in this Bristol race. Ganassi Racing looks like a contender again. Imagine that.
Well, all right, you may not speculate about Juan Pablo Montoya, but I'll do it for you. The 42 all of a sudden looks like a winner. Now, I understand that there could be a million reasons for that, and the 42 was fast a lot when Juan drove it. It just didn't finish up front very often, not nearly often enough, and I think it was just because Juan was way too aggressive and at times did not hit the patience button when he should have and cost himself wins and top finishes he should have had. I just don't think he ever quite adjusted to the NASCAR Sprint Cup mentality. But what about this kid Larson? I mean, I would never have expected him to come out of the box as strong as he has. He and Jamie McMurray seem to be working very well together. They've got new crew chiefs in there. They've got new personnel. Chip Ganassi Racing looks like it is poised to take a huge step up as we go toward the second half of the season. You give this kid Larson a half a season to see all the racetracks and let him go back again. And boy, I'll tell you what, he's a phenomenal young racer. And it's not that I think he's going to run away with this Rookie of the Year chase by any means, because there are several of the rookies that right now look very impressive. But boy, I gotta really tip my cap to young Kyle Larson for the job he's done so far in the season in Sprint Cup. He certainly looks like he could win a race at almost any time here, and wouldn't be at all surprised to see it happen before the season even gets to the halfway point, to be honest.
Yeah, wouldn't that be interesting, Tom? Let me tell you, Kyle Larson's been impressive. He finishes second in the Nationwide race, but that Nationwide race looked exactly like it did a year ago. It was the Kyle and Kyle show. Unfortunately, the Kyle that everybody wanted to see win wasn't the Kyle that actually won, and Kyle Busch wins his 7th Nationwide race at Bristol. And how many times have we heard this story before? I ought to phone up old DW. I talked it earlier in my blog. I think DW needs to give the crown of King of Bristol back to Bristol, because Kyle Busch may have just taken it away from him.
Well, yeah, and okay, so I've just gotten finished saying that it's easy to bash NASCAR, and now I'm gonna just put something on the table here. I think that it might be time, maybe now that NASCAR is getting things looked after nicely on the Sprint Cup side, and the racing's gotten better, and the cars have gotten better, and they've got this exciting new knockout qualifying thing going for them, and everything's good. I think maybe it's time now to take a look at this whole idea of these Cup guys running all the Nationwide races and running Truck Series races, and maybe start to think outside the box a little bit. We've talked on social media a bit and thrown it about just to get kind of our own little focus group going here. And overwhelmingly, I think the fans would like to not only see these guys be limited to maybe 3 to 5 Nationwide Series or Truck Series races a year, but I think everyone agrees that it's time to actually take Nationwide and the Truck Series and start to put them back on short tracks again where they belong. And I think if they did that, you reduce the cost of racing in the series drastically. You open it up to some of these drivers who are running in the K&N series, in the ARCA series, in the late model, super late model regional touring series. You start to make it a little bit more feasible for some of these guys that you see at your Saturday night short track to go ahead and run on Sunday. And I think if you did that, if you were to create that environment and put these cars back on the short tracks, I know it's tough on sponsors, or whatever. I know but in all honesty, I think it's time, Jacob, that we take these two series and make them more accessible to the average fan again, and get these Cup drivers out of running every week. Because frankly, Kyle Busch got a lot of boos the other day, and I think it was as much about the fact that he was any Cup driver as it was that, he's Kyle Busch. I think people are just tired of Kyle winning everything he runs. And it just doesn't. I don't think it. I think there are a lot of young drivers and a lot of other guys who deserve race wins. I know they fixed the points deal so that it has to be a series regular, but I just think it's time for the changeover, and NASCAR I think NASCAR could do really well to give some serious thought to that.
Of course they could, because you're right. The fans absolutely booed Kyle Busch this weekend. They didn't want to see him win a 16th NASCAR National Series race at Bristol, but he did it. So we'll see. Maybe if the fans speak loud and clear enough, NASCAR will listen, and we'll see what comes of that here in the coming weeks. But, Kyle Busch wins at Bristol. Congratulations to him. Before we go to commercial, how about a congratulations to Eddie McDonald, who picked up the win in the K&M Pro Series East at Bristol on Saturday after the Nationwide Series race, Tom. The 33-year-old out of Raleigh, Massachusetts, he's not won a race since the latter part of the 2000s. It's been 4 or 5 years since Eddie McDonald tasted victory lane, and he gets the better of Ben Rhodes on a green-white checker restart, and Rhodes just didn't have anything for him.
Well, to say Rhodes didn't have anything for him, I mean, I really want to commend Ben Rhodes, because that could just as easily have been Ben Rhodes' race, and we know that Ben is going to get at least one, if not multiple wins this year in the K&N series. But my goodness, Eddie McDonald, there is a true little guy story right there. That is a driver who comes out of New England and just does not come from a lot of money, a lot of resources. I mean, this is a driver who really is an underdog in that series against what he's running against, and it just goes to show that, especially here again, you look at it as a short track situation, and it's a great equalizer, and boy, what a huge win that is for Eddie Mack.
It is, and with that, we'll take our second caution flag of the evening, and when we come back, we're going to move to the open wheel side of things, because we're going to talk with our own Joel Sebastianelli on everything from F1 to IndyCar to Sebring and much, much more. It's Open Wheel Central here on Motorsports Madness, and that's coming up next after these words. You're listening to Speed77 Radio, powered by Race Chaser Online, and we are your home for motorsports.
For 17 years, Stock Car Steel has been a leading materials supplier to the racing industry. We're proud they're a motorsports content partner here at Race Chaser Online. The biggest names in NASCAR trust Stock Car Steel for raw materials such as carbon steel, chrome moly, DOM, aluminum, plastics, and much more. You can't build a race car without the basic materials, and Stock Car Steel is the place to get them. Don't forget to also visit Stock Car Steel's sister company, SRI Supplies, for racing and industry. SRI is the place to go for all your shop supply needs. Nuts, bolts, rivets, tapes, adhesives, cutting tools, chemicals, body shop supplies, paint shop supplies, lubricants, and more. A well-stocked race shop is a winning race shop, and the path to winning begins with 3 letters, SRI. For more information, visit stockcarsteel.com or SRI-supplies.com. Check them both out on Facebook or call them toll-free at 1-888-752-7272, 1-888-752-7272.
If I had a nickel.
If I had a nickel.
If I had a nickel for every time I wish my car had a horn. If I had a nickel for every time.
For every lucky charm I have brought to the racetrack.
If I had a nickel for every wardrobe change I had to make. Man, if I had a nickel.
If I had a nickel for every time I
Coulda, woulda, shoulda.
If you had a Sunoco Rewards credit card, you'd get a nickel for every gallon you pump. Go Sunoco.
I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker.
You're listening to Speed77 Radio,
Powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports.
Welcome back to Motorsports Madness here on Speed77 Radio and RaceChaserOnline.com, and it's time to delve into Open Wheel Central with a little bit of added coverage this weekend. We have our open wheel specialist back on the program with us, Joel Sebastianelli. Joel, certainly you've been a little bit all over the place this weekend. You were down in Sebring for the 12 hours and certainly been keeping an eye on all the open wheel action of the weekend with the Formula One Australian Grand Prix as well. Opening weekend for you just doesn't get any better than this, does it?
No, it doesn't. It's the most wonderful time of the year. Forget Christmas and the holiday season. It's too cold, and even in Florida for my liking. So this time of year, the weather is warming up. It's a beautiful weekend at Sebring, and all across the globe, you've got all sorts of racing. It's great to have it back.
Let's talk first about the Formula One season opener in Melbourne Albert Park, the Australian Grand Prix. We expected drama. We expected surprises. We certainly got it. But we also got you nailing one of your predictions from our team previews as well. You said a Mercedes was going to end up on top at the end of the Australian Grand Prix, and you were absolutely right with Nico Rosberg taking the victory over what originally looked like it was going to be Daniel Ricciardo. We'll get to a little bit more on that situation in a minute, but as far as the race itself, we saw Rosberg dominate while Sebastian Vettel and Rosberg's teammate Lewis Hamilton, both former world champions, experienced mechanical problems in their own right. We expected the problems, just didn't know who exactly they were going to happen to, but how big is this for Nico Rosberg in the opening race of the season, and what do we pull from this Australian Grand Prix that we can look at going forward for the Malaysian round here in a couple weeks?
Well, there's a lot of confusion right now. Sooner or later, that's all going to sort out. But for now, the fact that Mercedes at least appears much further ahead than the rest of their counterparts, to win a race like this is big. You've got a lot of drivers who you would consider to be the closest contenders, the Ferraris of Alonso and Raikkonen, Sebastian Vettel, Lewis Hamilton retiring, which of course for the entire team, they don't like that. But for Nico Rosberg and for his title hopes, I'm actually the minority, it seems, who thinks that he's the favorite on the team to win the title as opposed to his teammate Lewis Hamilton. So for Rosberg, it's big to get those points early and jump out to a good start. We also thought that maybe Mercedes wouldn't necessarily be invincible, but that they were leaps and bounds ahead of reliability. And sure enough, the very first practice session, it turns out that Lewis Hamilton actually stalled his car on the first lap before he could even complete a full lap. And he was taken out for the rest of that session. And then within 2 laps, he's forced to retire with engine troubles as well. So there's a lot of confusion for Mercedes and Nico Rosberg. It's good to get those points early. I don't know quite how much we really learned about the pecking order. It just reinforced that the Mercedes power teams right now are the teams to beat. If you look in the top 10, first, second, third, fifth, 6th, and 10th, all Mercedes-powered cars. That's, of course, excluding Ricciardo, who would have only been 5 in the top 10 if he wasn't disqualified. But Mercedes is definitely ahead of the competition right now.
Let's talk a little bit about the situation with Red Bull, because obviously what looked like it was not going to be a complete disaster turned into exactly that by the conclusion of the Grand Prix and even afterwards, with Sebastian Vettel going out early, not scoring any points in his first race in the quest for 5 straight world championships. Ricciardo carries the banner for Red Bull, finishes second until the stewards announce a little bit later on after the Grand Prix that he's been disqualified from his position. Joel, what do you make of the whole Ricciardo situation, and what does it say about some of the tech rules that Formula One is going to be forced to look at for 2014?
Well, there's definitely a lot more in regards to fuel this year. The Red Bull driver originally finished in second place, but has been disqualified. It was about 5 hours or so after the end of the race that it was announced. They disqualified the Red Bull for consistently exceeding the maximum fuel flow of 100 kilograms per hour. So that's what he was disqualified for. I don't necessarily have a lot of analysis for it, just that he broke the rules and that's what happened. Whether or not this was some sort of an intentional thing, whether or not it was an oversight by Red Bull, I'm not really sure, but I would venture to say that with so many changes in Formula One, he won't be the last one we see this happen to. Whether it's for fuel flow or for something else, I wouldn't be shocked to see teams either tinkering with the rules and trying to get around and being found out, or maybe just some accidental mistakes here and there, a few oversights. I think there's a lot that these teams aren't 100% in full swing with, and that's what we saw with Daniel Ricciardo. Really disappointing. It would have been great to see the Australian driver actually finish for real on the podium. The crowd was absolutely ecstatic. When Nico Rosberg walked up, there were some polite claps, as there were for Kevin Magnussen. But as soon as Ricciardo walked out, the crowd came to their feet and were absolutely ecstatic. So, very disappointing for them. Australian drivers don't always have the best luck at the Australian Grand Prix. So it would have been nice with Daniel Ricciardo, but if nothing else, at least for Red Bull, they can say they had a car, finished the race originally, and that's got to be at least a little bit of a confidence boost. Knowing that maybe we're not quite as far off as we thought. We did at least field one competitive car, albeit an illegal one.
Looking down the top 10, Joel, as far as the cars who finished in the points, I think we saw a lot of surprises in this opening race of the 2014 season. We saw the rookie, Kevin Magnussen, finish third for McLaren. We saw Nico Hülkenberg finish fourth for Force India. We saw Williams finish in the points with Valtteri Bottas. We saw both Toro Rosso cars with Jean-Eric Vergne and Daniel Kvyat finish in the points in the top 10. Is this just an example of the kind of parity that we're going to see all season this year in the Formula One World Championship?
If you want to call it parity, then yes, I'd rather call it unreliability and unpredictability. I think that, just straight line, if we're only talking a couple laps, I don't necessarily think that the Toro Rossos are anywhere up there with cars that weren't able to finish the race, cars that retired like Vettel, Hamilton, Massa, who had the collision at the very beginning. I think if you look at the drivers who are out, it's not necessarily the best cars in terms of speed. It's the cars that managed to finish to the end of the race. I don't know if every Grand Prix is going to be like this. Like I said, I think by the time we get to the European leg of the championship come May, there's going to be a lot more that's going to be figured out. If you want me to wager a prediction as to what the biggest controversy will be, I wouldn't be surprised to see Formula One open up another test, which would in essence give Renault a lot more time to figure out their slew of issues. And of course, that's just me totally speculating, but with so many teams having the difficulties that they are, I wouldn't be surprised to see one more engine test get thrown in there. I think eventually this stuff will figure it out, but as far as right now, there's definitely a lot of parity, and it's more than we've seen in previous seasons with Sebastian Vettel running away with things. So there's definitely a lot of intriguing things for fans here for Formula One. A lot more things that we're just flat out unsure about, which will definitely make things exciting from week to week.
Turning now a little bit away from the open wheel side of things for a minute, because you went down to the sports car leg of the world this weekend to cover race 2 of the Tudor United Sports Car Championship, and really a home race for you, the 12 hours of Sebring, and boy, did we see some storylines play out, from major incidents to many, many, many hours of caution. And when it was all said and done, we saw the masters of sports car racing back on top again in their first ever attempt at Sebring. We saw Chip Ganassi Racing and Scott Pruitt, Memo Rojas, and Marino Franchitti victorious for the 12 hours in a Ford EcoBoost powered Daytona prototype. Joel, how big is this, not only for Chip Ganassi Racing to really sound the call of, hey, we're back, don't forget about us, but to bring Ford to victory lane at Sebring for the first time since the 1970s?
Oh, it's huge to see the American flag back up at the top of the podium. It's been quite a while. Actually, 2008, I believe. Timo Bernard, Romain Dumas, and Emmanuel Collard. That was the last time with Penske Racing in the Porsche Spider that they had an American flag up at the top of the podium as the overall winner for manufacturers. So for Ford, it's a great deal for Ganassi. Like you said, it's the first time they even showed up in many, many years. It was a great race, a lot of caution flags throughout, a lot of fans getting restless. But when the action was on the track, it was a great battle in the prototypes all day long. You had the Action Express cars, particularly with Sebastian Bourdais when he was in the car, running up front. Stage Care had a great performance in the O2, in the other Ganassi machine that was fielded, as did Scott Dixon and Tony Kanaan along with him. Ganassi showed up and was running up at the front all day, and with about an hour to go, there still wasn't really a clear leader. So for Ganassi to surge away the way they did, Marino Franchitti putting in some great lap times at the very end to hold off the rest of the field and actually build the gap in the closing laps up to about 5 seconds. Great victory for Ganassi as a team.
If that final caution within the last hour doesn't fly and Marino Franchitti's forced to pit to where it would have cycled through under green flag, does he have the speed to contend for the victory, or do you think that caution flag was really the saving grace for the Ganassi team at the end of that race?
This is not a knock on the team at all, but had they been forced to pit, I think they would have been too far back. Too many really good cars up the front that had been at the front all day long, in particular the Action Express machine. That 5 was flying throughout the course of the day, especially at the very end. If they don't get that caution, they have to pit. They probably get bumped back further because of their running order at the time. You're probably looking at being outside the top 5, perhaps. So I think the caution's definitely the saving grace. But that's obviously not to take anything away from their effort at all, because that's just racing. This is the sort of thing that happens. Their strategy ended up working out perfectly with that caution, and they took home the checkered flag for 12 hours at Sebring.
And I know you had a decent position, but heard more about it from the television coverage, did a lot of the fans at Sebring, but the incident in turn 6 there, about an hour into the race, where you had one of the Viper machines in the GT class end up catching fire, coming to a stop, and ultimately nearly burning to the ground in a very scary incident. Nobody was harmed in the course of that crash, but a very scary incident, almost reminiscent of the jet dryer fire that we saw in the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series in 2012 at Daytona. What was your view of the incident, if you could see much of it? And at that point, what was the outlook on whether this race was going to go back to green as far as being able to really race in that section of the racetrack?
Well, you're right on point with the Montoya example, because that's the first thing we thought of. Ben Keating got out of his Viper right away, just as it started touching flames. So we knew that the driver was all right. But it's no exaggeration to say that for about 10 minutes that car was up in flames, and everything that could have burned, every ounce of fuel, every piece of bodywork, the interior of the car was completely fried. Beyond the point of just being well done, it was reduced to charcoal. And just a pile of ashes in a roll cage, essentially, by the time this thing was all said and done. There came a point when the fire guys were just completely done with it. They sprayed the fire extinguishers, and clearly that wasn't enough. So they actually ended up waiting for it to completely burn to the ground because there was nothing else they could do. It ended up being a 1-hour caution flag at the beginning of the event. And we were thinking exactly like you said with Montoya. We thought that there was going to be track damage from the heat. You could feel the heat when you're right up close, right around turn 6, though, which is where we were. If you're right up by the fence, certainly wasn't enough to singe your eyebrows off, but you could feel a little bit of heat coming off it as this thing's burning on the track. A bit of a scary incident from that extent. But thankfully, Ben Keating was able to rush out of the car right away. No burns for him. Very disappointing for that entire team, that whole operation, especially for the drivers that didn't even get a chance to compete in this event. Seeing the car sidelined in that manner, very disappointing. It seems as though throughout the course of the day, though, and maybe this isn't a good example for it, but a couple of very hard crashes, one of them involving Alex Pagliani, actually, with so many more cars as a part of the United Sports Car Championship now. I think we're seeing a lot more of these big incidents. We saw it with Memo Gidley at the 24 Hours of Daytona, a very hard crash there. More cars means more contact, especially as you get down to nighttime. Visibility maybe not as good. Guys worried about track position a little bit more when you've got so many extra cars in your classes. One of the incidents was caused by a guy just trying to whip it around and do a 180 in the middle of the track to beat the cat. Didn't beat the cat coming around the corner and got T-boned by Tagliani as a result. So we're seeing some more incidents. Better racing as well, but also a lot more contact at all sectors of the track. Just something interesting to note, I think, from the first 2 rounds of the series.
And a couple of IndyCar tidbits as well to get to real quick. Obviously, the biggest being the announcement of Verizon as the new title sponsor for the IndyCar Series for 2014. Joel, we've seen them as a longtime supporter of the IndyCar Series and the sanctioning body. How big is this for IndyCar to have a proven partner that they know is going to be a good fit for the ideals that they want for the series going forward for 2014 and beyond?
Oh, it's absolutely huge. In the years that IZOD was a sponsor for the IndyCar Series, the extent of their sponsorship was calling it the IZOD IndyCar Series. That's it. I don't think I ever saw an advertisement on TV. I don't think I saw anything when I was at St. Petersburg last year for the season opener. Verizon, on the other hand, despite not being a series sponsor, you see commercials with the Verizon cars in them. Everything in the fan area is sponsored by Verizon. You know that Verizon is a sponsor for the IndyCar Series, and unless somebody told you heard the full name, you never would have known that about IZOD. So signing this 10-year deal is huge for the series. They've got the IndyCar app on Verizon phones. Verizon does so much. This is an outstanding partnership for the series. Something that's actually kind of cool to note as well, Verizon will be continuing to sponsor Willpower and Juan Pablo Montoya, which, of course, in NASCAR with the phone companies, we saw that this was actually a big feud for a while. They had to strip the AT&T sponsorship off of Jeff Burton's 31, and I think either 2007 or 2008. Of course, Sprint next fall not allowed to sponsor any of the cars. So I think it's kind of interesting to note that Verizon will still be able to sponsor those cars, in addition to sponsoring the series too. But the more sponsors, the better, and the more viewership and the more visibility for the series, the better. And that's certainly something that Verizon's going to give them. This is a great fit for both sides.
And, of course, a tough note coming out of the IndyCar world late last night was the announcement that multi-time Indy 500 competitor who nearly won the race in 1980 and in 1972, Gary Bettenhausen, passed away late last night. A tough blow to open wheel racing. Certainly the Bettenhausen family, a longtime supporter of IndyCar racing. Tough to see them lose another member of the family. They've been very, very loyal to open wheel racing over the years.
They definitely have. It was very sad. I actually came up in conversation the other day with somebody that Gary Bettenhausen would have been one of the drivers I would have loved to have met at some point. He's a true racer. He would race anything and everything, especially if it was open wheel. Absolutely phenomenal sprint car racer throughout all the years. He's actually in the National Sprint Car Hall of Fame, was inducted in 1993. He's in the National Midget Auto Racing Hall of Fame as of 1998. And, of course, 21 Indianapolis 500 starts to his record. Never won the race, but it's because of people like Gary Bettenhausen that make the Indy 500 what it is today and make it mean what it means today. I actually rewatched the 1989 Indianapolis 500 about a month ago, and Bettenhausen had a very fast car, qualified very well, but was unable to take the green flag because of a valve that had broken in the car. Couldn't even start the thing to get it off the grid. And they went back and they did an interview with him in the garage for television. And he was on the point of tears, and I think it's the most emotional interview I've ever seen any athlete give for any reason. And I think in that one moment, of course, I don't have the access of being able to see every single race that Bettenhausen competed in. I've never personally met him. But having seen that, that's the memory that sticks out with me, is you can see how much the Indianapolis 500 meant to him. And that it was a really long time until the next Indy 500, and he didn't know how many chances he was going to have. And to see that sort of passion, it just shows what it means. And it's because of characters like him that make the Indianapolis 500, to me, the most special race in the entire world.
And Joel, we appreciate you taking the time here on The Madness, as always, to sit down and talk with us. We know we'll have you back on the show here in just a couple of weeks to recap not only the Malaysian round of the Formula One World Championship, but also drawing ever closer to the season opening Grand Prix of St. Petersburg for the IZOD IndyCar Series. Everything is heating up real quick, and I know you're looking forward to it just as the rest of us are.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, and enjoy the racing in the coming weeks.
And Tom, before we go to commercial, I do want to make it a point to mention the last thing that Joel and I talked about on our interview earlier this afternoon, and that was about the loss of Gary Bettenhausen. Very tough blow to the IndyCar community, Tom, one that was a little bit unexpected. Gary Bettenhausen, very well liked in the open wheel community, as we mentioned, ran the Indy 500 numerous times, and just a tough blow. That's a family who's always supported open wheel racing and motorsports in general, and, you know, it really broke my heart to see that announcement come out last night.
Yeah, I was really saddened by it. You know, Gary is one of those drivers. When I was growing up in the 70s, of course, I grew up in Oswego, New York, where open wheel racing, super modified style, reigned supreme and still does. And back in those days, the super modifieds were a real stepping stone to Indy. And so you would watch the Indy 500 on TV, and the Bettenhausens, Gary and Tony, were just, I mean, one of those families, one of the real first families of open wheel racing, and just tremendous racers. And of course, Gary also was a crossover driver. You know, we've been talking about Kurt Busch lately, and all about the idea of bringing back the concept of mixing Indy with NASCAR. And, you know, I think a lot of people forget, or may even not realize, that, you know, Gary actually ran Winston Cup, I think 8 or 10 times, and ran in the top 10. I mean, he was very successful by a lot of standards when he, you know, in the limited number of starts that he made, and also, you know, ran a lot of different types of open wheel cars on a lot of different tracks and types of surfaces. So he really was a racer's racer. And boy, I'll tell you what, it's always sad when you lose one of the legends of the sport. We certainly send our condolences to the family and all of those who were close to Gary, and definitely a very tough time in the open wheel community for sure.
So as we go to commercial, we too here at Speed77 Radio and Race Chaser Online want to offer our sincerest condolences to the Bettenhausen family on the loss of open wheel legend from the USAC and IndyCar ranks, Gary Bettenhausen. Gary Bettenhausen was 72 years old. We'll be right back.
You are round MVP.
Yeah, man. Yo, Drew, I finally got round MVP. Round MVP.
No way. That was some ownage. It's a good thing you got me as your wingman.
Right. You mean when you threw that flash grenade at me?
Whatever, man. Huge round. Seriously, great stuff.
Finally earning round MVP takes determination. So will getting into college. I've got what it takes.
All right, class. I'm going to pass back your tests. And a high score goes to Brian.
Oh, yeah! High score, baby!
We're all good at something. Maybe it's breakdancing or skateboarding or video games. Whatever you're good at, you have the skills to make it happen. And those same skills will help you get to college. Visit knowhowtogo.org to learn what you should be doing right now to prepare for college. Start taking the steps at knowhowtogo.org.
I've got what it takes. So do you.
Brought to you by the American Council on Education, Lumina Foundation, and the Ad Council.
Did you know that most teens who drink alcohol get it from people they know? Usually their friends or family members. But regardless of where they get it, alcohol puts teens at risk for injury, to themselves and to others. You can help make it a safe summer for the teens you know. Don't serve them alcohol. It's unsafe, it's illegal, and it's irresponsible. Find out more at don'tserveteens.gov. That's don'tserveteens.gov. A message from the Federal Trade Commission and this station.
I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker.
You're listening to Speed77 Radio,
Powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports.
Welcome back to Motorsports Madness here on Speed77 Radio and Race Chaser Online. Jacob Seelman, Tom Baker, and the entire cast of characters here for Motorsports Madness this evening. And before we get to our dirt segment, Tom, we've got a special featured interview for tonight's show that has really, I was really excited about this going into the week, and finally getting the opportunity to do this interview with Parker Kligerman from Swan Racing. Really a pleasure on my part. Parker, just a great guy, really a story behind him just from the way he came up through the sport. He didn't have any family money, didn't have any real family support behind his racing ventures. He pretty much did it all on his own talent and merit. Won 9 times in the ARCA Series in 2009, got hooked up with Roger Penske, moved to the Toyota camp, and now we've seen him in Swan Racing equipment. He's performed well, maybe not to the level of the top teams yet, but obviously that's a growing operation, and for PK, Colwitt, and that whole operation, good things are coming for 2014, and Parker just a stand-up guy, and really excited to share a little bit of his story with the fans tonight.
Yeah, you know, Swan Racing in general is really building a nice program over there, and Parker is a big part of that. I think people have been really surprised at how easily Parker has adjusted to whatever's been thrown at him, from the opportunity in ARCA to now the opportunity in a Cup car. I mean, he just, all I can think of is a man at ease. He just doesn't seem to be struggling with it. He doesn't seem to be uptight about anything. He just has this real down-to-earth, relaxed kind of attitude about all of this, and you know, I think he's got a really bright future, and really excited about the opportunity to have him on the broadcast here tonight.
As am I, and race fans, this is actually a 2-part interview, so Parker had a lot of things to say, and sit back, fasten your seatbelts, and enjoy, because we're going to roll the tape and let you hear a little bit of the story behind Parker Kligerman's rise through the ranks. Parker, first off, thank you for taking some time to talk with us this afternoon. You've had a very up and down ride up the motorsports ladder over the last couple years. Started out in 2009, won Rookie of the Year in the ARCA Series, and 9 wins. Just came a couple points short of winning the championship, and just have really bounced from team to team over the last few years, trying to find a home where you can really build your career. Talk a little bit about what the last couple years has been like for you as you've moved ultimately from the ARCA Series all the way up through the Truck Series and Nationwide Series to where you are right now.
Yeah, it's been a tumultuous ride. That's the best word for it. You know, someone asked me the other day if you could do it over again, you know, would you do it the same? And I say I don't ever want to change anything. I don't like to look back, but I don't recommend the way I did it for anyone. I think to get to the Sprint Cup Series, I think, you know, I had just one of those almost journey-like sessions to the Sprint Cup Series where it took many turns and twists, but eventually I was able to get here. You know, I started with Penske in the ARCA Series 2009, and I had only, you know, when I did my first ARCA start at the end of 2008, I had only raced in oval for about a year and a half, and only done about 30 races on oval in midget, 2-sack midgets, and then jumped in ARCA car and was immediately fast, and found myself in the Penske development program a month later. I mean, in 2009, we obviously won 9 races. It came out of that thinking, you know, okay, this is going to be a quick accession to the top, and then, you know, subsequently we were just in the midst of the recession. At the same time, Penske Racing was, you know, taking in Brad Keselowski and had, you know, Justin Allgaier there, and there wasn't just a lot of room to move up. And because of that, you know, I kind of jumped around to some different things. I did the 42 car 2010 for 10 races at Nationwide, which was kind of a lower budget deal. And we had some good results, but, you know, definitely one of those things where, you know, you couldn't set the world on fire with the equipment you had. And then I went to Truck 2011, and same deal, you know, it was a very last minute, low budget deal. With Brad Keselowski Racing, and we were able to have, once again, really good results and good runs. We just, you know, we didn't have quite the resources to fight with the top teams. And in 2012, you know, I was doing really well in the Truck Series with BKR, and we were getting better. We weren't great, but we were getting better. and felt like, with some improvements to the resource side and such, we could really make jumps. And halfway through the year, I left them and went to Red Horse and subsequently went on and won my first race and was probably should have won the championship that year. And then went to Nationwide in 2013 with Calabash Motorsports and had an okay year. A couple races got away from us that we should have won. After that, was given my opportunity at Swan Racing in November of last year, and I had the best debut of any rookie that debuted last year in 18th place, and had their best finish at a mile and a half ever. From there, got the ride in the 30 car for this year.
I know in 2012, like you said, you left BKR about halfway through and moved over to the Toyota camp with first Red Horse and then KBM in the Nationwide Series for 2013. Do you feel like that move away from Roger Penske really lit a second spark in your career as far as, people talk all the time about guys like Joey Logano who move from the only situation they've known and really find a place to belong. Was that the case with you when you moved over to the Toyota camp and ultimately found your home now with Swan Racing?
Absolutely. The funny thing about the development driver deal is that it can get very stale. And what I mean by stale is the relationship gets stale. I was at Penske Racing since I was basically just barely 18 years old through being, 20, 22 years old. And, or just before 22. And I guess, when you look at that, I grew up as a person, as an individual, as a race car driver. And, they can see your flaws and the things, the mistakes you make and that sort of thing. And I think it can hurt the relationship a little bit because you are so young. And if you're not given the opportunity to set the world on fire, you can get almost complacent about the situation. And that's not to put Penske Racing down or anyone there. I'm so grateful for that opportunity. The only reason I made it into a stock car was because of Roger Penske and Penske Racing. I just believe, at the time there wasn't much ability for me to move up within the organization. For myself as a driver, I almost had to leave to go grow as a race car driver and as a person. And I think it was best for everyone involved that, we went our separate ways at the time. I've been there so long. It just, it becomes one of those things where you really need to evaluate, how to get better and that where you need to go learn from new people. Brendan Davis, my owner at Swan Racing, had a good insight on that. He said when he was growing up, as he was becoming better in the business world and bigger in the business world, one thing he always tried to do is make sure that there was someone smarter in the room, someone that he could look up to, a mentor almost. And, that's the way you get better. And I think for myself as a race car driver, moving away from Penske Racing and going in different opportunities where maybe I could have a bigger role in the organization was only going to help me grow as a race car driver. And I feel like I did grow a lot as a race car driver when I look back at who I was in 2011, 2012 to who I am now. I'm very proud of that. But I can't thank them enough, and I think you look at Joe Logano's situation, same situation, he got away from where he'd been the whole time with the relationship, maybe was a bit stale, but, a bit complacent, and then was able to go somewhere where he could really be a better part of the organization and blossom as a race car driver.
November of last year, you get a call from Swan Racing to make your Cup debut at Texas, finish 18th, their best result of the season, finish 25th at Homestead. Both times you're on the lead lap, have some really strong runs, and then that call turns into a full-time opportunity for 2014. What has the last couple of months been like for you as far as knowing from where you started, you've now reached the pinnacle of where any race car driver hopes to go in this country to the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series?
Yeah, no, it's been an amazing ride, and I think, the time that it really hit me was about 2 minutes before the race at Texas, or before we got in the car. I read a quote by Kurt Busch a couple years ago when I was at Penske Racing, and it was a quote by him that said that when he was coming up through the ranks so quickly, and he got the Cup so quickly, he said, the biggest regret is I wish I took just a minute to smell the roses and realize what I had done, that he had made it to the top of the sport so quickly and had gotten there, and it was there to stay. For myself at Texas, the weekend was back and forth between the Nationwide cars for the Cup car, and we were doing so well in the Cup car. Right before I started the race, I kind of looked around and just realized, hey, this is Sprint Cup. You've done it. You've got to the absolute top of the sport. And then to go on and have the performance that we did was an awesome day. I think when I look back at, the Daytona 500 this year, I had that same feeling of you made it to the Daytona 500, and I think that was a really cool thing. But the race car driver and the competitor in me takes over immediately and wants to do better and wants to go out there and get the best performance possible. And this year, I wanted to carry over the performance we had for those two races, the 30 car last year, where we were I felt really, really good. For a rookie and for a small team, with the equipment they had, the resources, we were doing a great job those two races, really fighting way above our weight and doing some great things, and felt like, that combination of Stephen Lane, the crew chief, and myself, and carrying that 2014 with more experience and a better idea of what we wanted to accomplish. I felt like we'd have a really good start to the season if we could carry that over, and subsequently we have not had that start to the season. We have had probably the worst 4 weeks to start a season I've ever experienced in my life, and I asked my crew chief, Steve Lane, the same thing at Bristol after practice on Saturday, and I said, hey man, have you ever been through something quite like what we've been going through these last 4 weeks? And he said, no, never. So it's been a tough time, but hopefully we can fight back. It's a long season, and maybe if we get all this bad luck out of the way, beginning, we can go the rest of the season with great results.
And we're going to take a caution flag here on Motorsports Madness, but we'll have much more with Parker Kligerman right after this. You're listening to Speed77 Radio, and Race Chaser Online will be back after these words.
For 17 years, Stock Car Steel has been a leading materials supplier to the racing industry. We're proud they're a motorsports content partner here at Race Chaser Online. The biggest names in NASCAR trust Stock Car Steel for raw materials such as carbon steel, chrome moly, DOM, aluminum, plastics, and much more. You can't build a race car without the basic materials, and Stock Car Steel is the place to get them. Don't forget to also visit Stock Car Steel's sister company, SRI Supplies, for racing and industry. SRI is the place to go for all your shop supply needs. Nuts, bolts, rivets, tapes, adhesives, cutting tools, chemicals, body shop supplies, paint shop supplies, lubricants, and more. A well-stocked race shop is a winning race shop, and the path to winning begins with 3 letters, SRI. For more information, visit stockcarsteel.com or SRI-supplies.com. Check them both out on Facebook or call them toll-free at 1-888-752-7272, 1-888-752-7272.
Hi, this is Jamie McMurray here for RAD, the entertainment industry's voice for road safety. Want to make a difference? It's simple. Be responsible. Plan ahead. Designate before you celebrate. Friends don't let friends drive drunk.
Baby, you can drive my car. Yes, I'm gonna be a star.
A public service message brought to you by the U.S. Department of Transportation, RAD, the National Association of Broadcasters, and the Ad Council.
I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker.
You're listening to Speed77 Radio,
powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports. Welcome back to Motorsports Madness here on Speed77 Radio and Race Chaser Online, sitting down to talk with Swan Racing NASCAR Sprint Cup Series driver Parker Kligerman. And Parker, Swan Racing expanded to a 2-car team this year, and you've been working alongside your teammate Cole Witt, and both of you are relatively young guys. We call you the young guys, and yet we still see these guys like Kyle Larson, Ryan Blaney, and guys who are now even younger than you trying to break into the ranks of the top level of NASCAR. But what's it been like for you working with Cole here over the first few races of 2014 and having that second voice and that second person who's really come out of a similar situation as you have now in the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series?
For Swan Racing, the biggest thing for us is expanding the 2 cars. I guess the only way to put it has been a strength. For a young team, a growing organization, like to say, it's no doubt been a strain on our organization, but we did it with the intentions of being better in the future. The way we look at it is being that Triad is our engine provider, building Toyota Motors. They don't have anyone else in the Sprint Cup Series. So if there was only one car, we'd lack that data and that ability to improve the engines and to get better with them. And then for us as an organization, we don't have a technical alliance with any big cup organization. So for us, we need a way to bring in more information and more ways to find out what we need in the future, setup-wise and development-wise and engineering-wise. And going to 2 cars does that. But at the same token, it takes a massive amount of more resources and more funding and ability to do that. And so, I feel like at the start here, no matter what organization you are or what size you are, it's going to hurt you to go to another car. And we've seen that, but in the long run, we hope to be better because having Cole there, he's obviously a good driver. He definitely can get the job done. He has speed and such. So we don't worry about that. It's just providing the best resources behind both cars is a tough deal. But hopefully, as we get through these first quarter of the season, we can really start to make some inroads, expand our organization, expand our engineering, and hopefully try out to continue to develop their motors. We have a new Toyota motor block that's generation that's coming online here in April. That will be a big step forward for all the Toyota teams, including ours. So we really look at that as the thing that going forward will be better off. You know, we'd hope to be able to just kind of sustain these first 6 races, where we can really just kind of settle ourselves in the top 30 or top 25 and then go from there to really have great performance. But that hasn't been the case, so we'll just have to fight back harder going forward and hopefully be able to continue to improve, which, you know, is the only way that we can really make sure this two-car situation is helping this organization get better.
I know it's been not the start you guys wanted, but I know you guys still have a lot of optimism for the rest of 2014. Where does Swan Racing set the expectations for the rest of the year, knowing that, yes, there's going to be some growing pains, but knowing some of the performances that the organization put up at the tail end of last year, that you guys have the potential to make some things happen?
Yeah, we definitely do, and I think if you look at everything we decided in the beginning of the year, is that our goal is top 25 in the point standings, owner point standing. You know, it's a big goal. It's a big jump from where they were last year, 33rd in owners points. But it's a goal that we look at it. If you combine, you know, especially myself in the 30 car last year, if you took our average finish those 2 races, which was 23rd, you know, that puts you 22nd or 23rd in points. So, you know, we really felt like going in this year we could make a big jump into doing that, you know, if we just kept up the same performance. The issue we've had is obviously with the massive rule changes that the sport has gone through in the last 3 months and the huge suspension changes that we've made. It's really put a strain on the smaller teams without information to go out there and figure out what we need to run. It's opened up a huge can of worms that we didn't foresee happening in terms of what you could do with the setups of these cars, and now puts us behind the 8 ball, you know, and on top of expanding 2 cars. And I think that's what we've seen from our lack of performance compared to last year. You know, if we really carried what we were doing last year, we had a great handle on what it took to run well. It was, you know, you've been living with the same package for almost 8 years. You know, the information throughout the sport was very transparent. And so we knew exactly what we need to run. And this year, it's just been a struggle. With that said, you know, we don't quite have the massive engineering base that we need at this point. You know, we'll hope to expand that over the year. But finding really good engineering talent is a tough thing at this time. And so, you know, all those things combined, it's just put us a little bit behind where we'd like to be performance-wise. And hopefully we can fight back to that over the next couple of months, as I said before, be able to play catch-up. The problem is this sport, you never quite catch up. If you're behind, you almost have to go double-fold to catch up. So that's just the nature of how fast the sport moves technically and how fast the engineering moves. And with this new rules, it's moving faster than ever. And so we're still going to keep up, but I'm hopeful that we can turn that around and really use our resources, Toyota and TRD and everyone involved, to get moving forward as quickly as possible.
I mentioned before, you're still one of the young guys of this sport, just 23 years old, but you've made it to the top in a relative hurry. You mentioned that you wanted to take a few moments to stop and really appreciate how far you've come in a short time, but looking back on it, does it surprise you at all that you've gotten here the way you have, as quickly as you have over the last couple of years?
I'll say that my manager, who's been with me since literally the start of driving race cars, and I, a couple of weeks ago, kind of turned each other and said, no matter what happens, we shouldn't even be here. And the reason I say that is because I've gotten to the Sprint Cup Series with literally no family funding. My dad's not even a racing fan. He doesn't like racing. He only helped me out my first year in cars financially. So somehow I've kind of broken the rules of the idea that you have to have family funding or a big sponsor or have a ton of media press about you to make it this level. And so every time I'm here, I say I shouldn't even be here. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here. With that said, you know, at the end of the day, I also want to perform. I want to go out there and set the world on fire. I want to be the best there is. I want to be the best I could be. And so the competitor in me says, yeah, it's great I got here, and it's great that I, you know, got here in the time frame I did. But at the same token, I just want to be here and be better. You know, I want to be here and I want to perform better and I want to be better than these guys around me. I guess, you know, for myself, that's where, you know, I look at the idea of where I am and when I look back, how I can be better is the biggest thing. Is what teams or what organizations or what choices can I make and what can I do for Swan Racing and everyone here to make sure that my performance is better, that our performance is better, that, you know, my place in the Sprint Cup Series is higher up the rankings because at the end of the day, this is a performance-based sport, and especially at this level, if you don't perform, you won't be here for very long. So it's nice that I got here, but at the end of the day, I want to go out there, I want to perform, I want to win.
And I think at the end of the day, the attitude you take into it is one of the most admirable parts of your story. But Parker, I know you can't do it alone, and I know you've had a lot of people and supporters and sponsors behind you helping to make it happen. So I'm going to let you give some shout-outs to all those people who have been behind you. Talk about who makes it happen for Parker Kligerman.
Well, in my career move, coming up the ranks, one of the biggest supporters of my career, and definitely one of my best friends and people, a person that I look at as more than just a supporter or a friend, but almost a mentor. And that was Briggs Cunningham Motorsports. When I went to Cunningham Motorsports, I didn't have a dollar to my name and a lot of expectations, or I guess a lot of fanfare. And I was able to go out there and perform at a really high level and win a lot of races. And because of that opportunity I got from Briggs Cunningham. And so I can't thank him enough, and the Cunningham family and the Cunningham Motorsports family. And then from there would be Roger Penske and Penske Racing were massive in my career, Brad Keselowski. And then looking at Bandit Shippers, North American Power, those are the people that we've been able to cultivate as sponsors that have really helped my career in the last few years. Camp Horsey Around, a charity that we're involved with, that's been very helpful. So all those people and all those entities have been a huge part of my career and my ability to get to the Sprint Cup level. And then lastly would be Swan Racing and Brandon Davis, and everyone at this organization for giving me the shot at the Sprint Cup level. With that said, I also have a company I started last summer. It's a startup company called Newtelligence, NOOTELLIGENCE, or newfocus.com. It's NOOTFocus.com, and that's the company I started. That's kind of been also a budding thing for myself on the side that I have a couple people running, and hopefully will grow into something big enough to be a supporter of my racing one day as well. A lot going on.
And certainly a lot going on as you continue throughout 2014, Parker. We appreciate you taking some time to sit down and talk with us this afternoon. We wish you and Swan Racing all the best as you continue through the 2014 season, and look forward to seeing you on track as the Sprint Cup Series heads next week to Auto Club Speedway in Fontana, California for the last race of the really opening West Coast swing of the 2014 season. And like I said, wish you all the best going forward.
Thank you. Appreciate it, buddy.
And with that, we are going to take a caution flag here on Motorsports Madness, and when we come back, much more here from the Race Chaser Online Speed 77 studios. We'll be right back after these words.
Let me drive.
How do you know when it's time to give up the keys? When your dog grabs your keys from your lap and your lap is on the floor. Yep, it's Jeff Foxworthy Parade saying, when you party, be sure to designate before you celebrate.
If you want to make it home alive, let me drive.
A public service announcement brought to you by the U.S. Department of Transportation, RAD, the National Association of Broadcasters, and the Ad Council.
Please don't drink and drive. It's not fun.
I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker.
You're listening to Speed 77 Radio,
powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports. Welcome back to Motorsports Madness here on Speed 77 Radio and RaceChaserOnline.com. Jacob Seelman and Tom Baker here at the round table, and now we are joined for the dirt track segment of our show this evening by the cast of the Turn 5 Racing Podcast, Stephen Ovens, Clint Miller, and the entire gang here in studio with us. Guys, let me tell you what, the Outlaws are back in town on the West Coast. They're back in town, you're back in town. We're glad to have you back with us, and certainly an exciting weekend of racing across the dirt track side of the motorsports world as well.
That is for sure, and I want to point out that some things that we talked about last week here on the Madness really came to fruition in Darren Pittman finally breaking through with a win, Joey Saldana, broken arm and all, coming through with some great finishes, and this kid Rico Abreu coming away with the win, and not only that, Clint, Logan Schuchart.
Our Turn 5 graduate, Logan Schuchart. What a great weekend he had, and just goes to show you that, you know, these kids out here, the world of outlaws are bright. The future is huge for the world of outlaws.
Yeah, the future is very huge, and I want to talk first about the defending champion, Darren Pittman, who got it done on Friday night. Pittman, who has struggled through every facet of the 2014 season, and admittedly will say he does not like the Thunderbolt at Tulare, California one bit. And where does he break his winless 2014 streak? The Thunderbolt at Tulare, California. What is it about these racetracks and drivers not liking it, and all of a sudden, right when they need a good run, and they go to really the worst place imaginable you would think for them to break a bad run, and they go and have a good run?
Well, the funny thing about Darren Pittman talking about not liking Thunderbolt that much and maybe not being his best track, I mean, you look at his finishes last year, the guy had a couple of top fives there last year, which, surely didn't, bust down the doors of the barn or anything of that sort, but, still some pretty good runs there, and I think that was just the place he needed to finally break through, get in the win column for 2014, and I gotta tell you, Clint, it was a pretty good battle. He didn't get that win walking away. I mean, he certainly put in a good run for the Great Clips 9 car.
Yeah, he did definitely fight for it. Logan Schuchart led the first 22 laps, and his car tightened up a little bit, but that goes to show you that the experience of the Outlaws, they know their car setup. They know you get around lap 20, 25, with the long runs, cars are going to come to you. And, Darren, I think that drivers tend to do better on tracks that they like. Not that they don't concentrate on tracks that they do like, but, you have to concentrate that little bit more because it's a track that you're not successful at, and you want to be good, you want to do it right, so you maybe give that 115% instead of the 105%, and you go out and lo and behold, you get a win, first one of the year, maybe to get your season back on track.
And we talked about, Logan Schuchart getting a second place run on night 2. He really started off strong in that feature, led the first 22 laps. And I really got to believe that, Clint, that car tightened up because in the first 22 laps, he's out front. He's his first season with the World of Outlaws. I got to believe he burned his stuff up in that 22 laps. But boy, what a shot of confidence that's got to be for young Logan Schuchart out there on the World of Outlaws. They're out in California. We've had several conversations about the fact that, are these guys going to be able to compete the entire season? They say they're going out and doing the whole season, but can they stick with it? Can they have some good runs in California, not trash a bunch of cars, and be able to continue with this and run strong? And man, a little shot of confidence. I know it was only an 8th place finish on Friday night, but that was his first top 10 with the World of Outlaws. Comes back out on night 2 and backs it up with a 2nd place finish.
Well, yeah, I mean, you gotta, you think about it, and he didn't know what to expect, so whether how they set the car up, but these guys struggled. Volusia, they made 1A main. They may have made 1A main when they were in Vegas. So, and they're spending money, they're borrowing parts off one car, putting it on the other car. Jacob Allen missed a night because they took the power steering off of his car and put it on Logan's. Logan went out in the B main, didn't want to wreck it, so he just kind of rode around. So you get the wonder, God, do these guys have it to compete all year long? And then he goes out to Tulare and brings home 2 top 10 finishes. I think he almost banked $7,000 for the weekend. So, that's definitely going to get you through the next few races.
Yeah, it is. And, night 2, we've already talked about the 2nd place finisher, but how about the winner of this race? The kid who always says that big racing things come in small packages, and Rico Abreu proved that Saturday night. He goes to victory lane for his first career World of Outlaws STP Sprint Car Series win, and not only does that, but climbs up on the roof to celebrate after the end of that one, or I guess that'd be the wing, wouldn't it, on that number 24 Abreu Vineyards sprint car. But tell you what, Steven, this kid, we talk about Kyle Larson being good on the dirt tracks. You want to talk about the next guy who I think might be a potential superstar, whether it's in the open wheel ranks or whether he makes a transition to pavement one of these days. Rico Abreu is it.
Absolutely. And until I've heard a few interviews that Rico has done this season, both on national and local shows here up in the Northeast, I never realized that really that's what he'd love to do. If he had an opportunity, he'd love to get on the pavement. But man, I gotta tell you, he is really making a name for himself out there, and he's not doing it because there's huge money backing or any of that sort. He is out there earning it every single weekend, and like we said last week, he's got a very aggressive schedule in 2014, running these wing sprint cars, non-wing sprint cars, midget cars, you name it. Rico Abreu is driving it this year, and I tell you, Saturday night, he really had to earn that win because Terry McCarl was a rocket ship all night long. Took home quick time, took home 5th in his heat, which still got him into the dash. He ends up winning the dash and really had a strong car. But man, when Rico got to him, I mean, it was lights out. And even at the end, when Logan got up to 2nd and Saldana and McCarl and Brad Sweet were all fighting in the top 5, nobody had any. Even Logan Schuchart said, even if I had another yellow flag and got a restart, I didn't have anything for Rico Abreu. And Clint, what a win for Rico. And I love the wing dance. That has got to be the picture of the year so far.
Yeah, without a doubt. And, once Rico got to the lead, there wasn't anything stopping him. He earned everything he got, but once he got out front, he walked away with it. I think he had a 3-second lead when Logan Schuchart came into 2nd place. And, he was just, the kid can flat out drive. He can flat get it done. Whatever he sits in, he's just, that's the guy. And like you said, he wants to be on the pavement. But I think if this kid can get a full-time World of Outlaw ride, before he gets to the pavement or whatever he's going to do in his future, I believe that he can contend on any track that they race at.
Oh, I think he absolutely could. And Jacob, it's funny that we're talking about Rico and his 24 car, sponsored by Abreu Vineyards. I know you just had your session with Joel Sebastianelli here. Maybe this is something we could hook Rico and some of the wine and cheesers up with the Abreu Vineyards.
Oh, I hadn't even thought about that. But, Tom, I would have to say Joel might like that. He's all fancy-like over there with his Formula One and European and the wine and the cheese and the fancy foods. And I have to say I like Steven's idea here. I think we might get a smile out of Joel for that for once.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I definitely like the idea. I think it's a great idea.
All right, Steven, looking ahead here on the World of Outlaws schedule, they head next Saturday now to the Stockton Dirt Track in Stockton, California for the FVP Western Spring Shootout. That's another bull ring track, and we've seen a lot of parity so far this season in the World of Outlaws. No guys except for Donnie Schatz and Brad Sweet even being multi-time winners this season. We go to Stockton. The question arises again, can somebody break out from the pack, or is this going to be a season where we're not going to know what's going to happen until about July, August, and these stretches of races that reappear again just before the championship swing, to where then we really get a feel for who is going to be the front runners for this championship?
I really think we are going to have to get through the spring stretch here, get everybody back toward the Midwest and East Coast, and really get into the meat of the schedule in the summer. And I think that's when we're really going to start to know where we're sitting as far as the points and the championship goes. The thing that Clint and I talked tonight about was the fact that these bull ring tracks, these third-mile tracks that they're running, it really takes the big money motor out of it. Yes, you got to have a strong power plant if you're going to win races, but boy, it really puts the race into the driver's hands. I mean, they've got to wheel those race cars. If any of the fans listening tonight hasn't had a chance, get yourself onto YouTube, check out the highlight videos from the World of Outlaws. I'm telling you, these guys are absolutely wheeling the car on these short little bull ring tracks.
Yeah, I mean, I know from experience here in the Northeast, tacky tracks tend to bring everybody together because you don't have to have the money, because everybody's going to hook up. It's not like when you get on a slick track where the shock packages come into play. Maybe other things that top dollar teams have that maybe the young guys don't, that, really sets them apart from them on the big slick tracks. But when you got a fat track like that, it really comes down to driver ability, and it makes it tough and it makes it tight. And these guys are doing wheel stands half, 3/4 of the way down the straightaway. I mean, you could see Enrico's car, the left front just, barely spinning all the time. So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it is, guys, and I'm looking forward to the Outlaws getting back at it next Saturday, or this coming Saturday now, for the FVP Western Spring Shootout at Stockton. I know you guys will be keeping an eye on it on the Turn 5 podcast. We always appreciate you coming on and offering a little bit of dirt track insight. Anything else from up there in the Northeast here before we roll the conclusion in tonight's show?
Well, there is. I know last week we had discussed Rolling Wheels Raceway, or Rolling Wheels Raceway Park being announced, and I got to tell you guys, after we talked last week, everything has just died right off. What was supposed to be a large announcement last Tuesday and then pushed to Wednesday has really now fizzled out, and all of those money shows that we talked about are really in question. And even if the deal is to come through now, and I know Tom was really enlightening with me in discussing what this could mean to the motorsports world up here. That really seems to have kind of died off, and it really goes back to the fact of sometimes when it sounds too good to be true, sometimes it is just that. Too good to be true. So we're following that. We'll see if it actually ends up going through. We were supposed to get our first race of the year in this weekend at the Orange County Fair Speedway for the Hard Clay Open. $30,000 purse on tap there for the big block and small block modifieds. They're going to be using passing points at Orange County for the heat races to qualify those guys. And on top of that, they're putting sail panels on the dirt big block modifieds. That, due to the snow we got up here, that has been pushed back to Sunday, April 6th. We're still working with Brett Dale for us to be out there to cover it for Race Chaser Online, Speed77 Radio, and the Turn 5 Racing Podcast, and we cannot wait to get out there.
And we're excited to hear all about it. The Orange County Fair Speedway, a really fast track, and one that I know a lot of Northeast race fans really enjoy going out to, guys. We appreciate you coming on as always. And Tom, I know we're just about ready to roll the conclusion, but I want to hit a few tidbits real quick. AMA Supercross, we've talked about James Stewart before, but James Stewart equaled a legend with his win at Ford Field Saturday night. Stewart matching Ricky Carmichael with 48 career Supercross victories. That's second all time. His third win in Detroit. How about that? Just an unbelievable drive from a driver that I know a lot of people thought didn't have it left in him.
Yeah, and here again, I mean, we just keep on seeing these interesting outcomes in this AMA series this year. Stewart's 48th win ties him with Carmichael for second on the all-time win list. It just goes to show how competitive this stuff is, and boy, what a great win for him. And of course, Ford Field, Detroit needs anything good right now, and I know that this is arguably the most popular form of indoor racing that exists, and also outdoor as well. And I think this was just a great event for the city of Detroit, and really, really interesting to see James Stewart get a win, and good for him.
Yeah, Ryan Villapoto, though, extends the championship lead to 30 points, so that championship getting closer and closer. That's more than a race lead for Villapoto as he looks to wrap up his fourth straight Supercross championship. NHRA drag racing was in action this weekend as well, Tom, for the Amali Motor Oil Gator Nationals out in Gainesville, Florida. We got to convince Joel to go down there at some point. That's right in his backyard right now, at least while he's going to school. We need to get him to smell some nitrous and see what the NHRA is all about. But some interesting developments there as well. In Top Fuel, you had Sean Langdon take a win at the Gator Nationals. In funny car, Robert Height outduels his father-in-law, John Force, to take the Gator Nationals victory. Pro Stock, Alan Johnson goes to victory lane in the very first race ever for the Dodge Dart in Pro Stock competition. So I know the Mopar factory guys just ecstatic that they've built another car that can go to victory lane, and Steve Johnson getting the win in Pro Stock motorcycles. But Tom, you know, we've seen John Force qualify so well this year. We've seen him race well. He's up right at the top of the point standings once again. He may not have won at the Gator Nationals again on Sunday, but John Force just keeps on keeping on.
I heard the phrase ageless wonder uttered one time, and I want to say it was about Bentley Warren, the short track open wheel legend that we talk about so often on here. But I just think that's apt when you talk about guys like John Force. Ageless wonder. They just keep going, as you say, keep on keeping on. But I got to tell you, I want to throw a personal attaboy out to Alan Johnson and the Mopar team for that Dodge Dart debut. I'm a big fan of that Dodge Dart car, and to see that as a Pro Stock, I mean, it's just gorgeous. It's a really neat looking car, and it was great to see it go out and make a debut. You hit it right in the head with, you know, what a dazzling debut it was. I mean, that's just an amazing thing, really, to come out of the box in such a competitive class and get a win first time out.
Exactly, and the last thing we have to do is make our picks for this weekend. We go to Auto Club Speedway in Fontana, California, and Tom, I still got memories from a year ago here. I can't believe it's been a year since we watched Joey Logano and Denny Hamlin go at it to basically to the point of blows on that final lap. Kyle Busch sneaking by for the victory. 1 year later, I've heard talk that the feud is going to be reignited, or at least to some extent not forgotten this weekend. As we go to Auto Club, you know, we've seen some really good, really gutsy races so far this season. I'd have to imagine it's going to be similar to the Las Vegas race, where we could see a fuel mileage ploy play out. It got a little strung out at times, but there was still really good racing throughout the pack. Who do you like, and what do you expect to see on Sunday?
I like Kevin Harvick, and I expect to see a fantastic race. Honestly, I think these cars are proving to be very racy cars, and I think we're going to start to see really exciting racing everywhere we go. I think the changes that they made over the winter and the way that the teams keep refining things, I mean, I think all the tracks, it really is going to elevate the level of competition, I think, at all the tracks. And with this new format that we got, basically win and you're in, I mean, these guys are racing hard, and I just, again, something's calling me back to Happy Harvick, you know, at Phoenix, and now again out in the West Coast, his home turf, so to speak, out there. I just like Kevin Harvick in the Budweiser Chevrolet, and that's who I'm going with.
I can't fault you there. However, I am not going to go with Kevin Harvick. I have got to go with a guy who has been really good at Fontana in the past. He may not have won there last year, however, he had a very strong run. And, oh, by the way, he's also a guy whose teammate won at Las Vegas and who sat on the pole at Las Vegas. I think the feud may be reignited, but it's going to be Denny Hamlin looking at the rear bumper of Joey Logano. I am picking Logano to avenge the one that got away a year ago. I'll say the 22 Penske Ford goes to victory lane for the first time this season and becomes the fifth driver to ice a position in the chase for the NASCAR Sprint Cup. I don't know what it is. Penske's just been on it. They've had it at these mid-level to intermediate tracks. Keselowski won at Vegas even though Junior ran out. Keselowski was good. Logano was good even though he faded a little bit late. All in all, just like you said, something was calling you to the 4 of Harvick, something's calling me to the 22 of Logano. I say Joey Logano gets his first win of 2014 on Sunday.
Well, I'd be happy to see that. My buddy Todd Gordon, crew chiefing that effort, and really would Be glad to see Todd get to victory lane, and Joey. I mean, it's been coming for a while, and in terms of a win of the sort that you'd want to see, and of course Penske's owned the front row, for crying out loud, or at least a portion of it, every single race, and so. Yeah, Roger Penske certainly has that team hooked up, but this is one of those tracks, Jacob, where I think it could really be wide open. I mean, the Fords, I'm sure, will run well here. Obviously, the Hendrick cars, and of course, you got Kyle Busch and Denny and Matt. I mean, this really could be one of the more exciting races we've had so far, because this is the type of track where there are a lot of drivers who run well here. So. I think it's going to be a fun show on Sunday. I'm just really excited about the way the season's playing out so far, and I must say, pleasantly surprised.
Oh, so am I. It's been a great season so far, and it's been a season full of risks, and I'm going to talk about that later this week on Race Chaser Online, as well as tell more of Parker Kligerman's story tomorrow on the website, so keep it tuned to RaceChaserOnline.com for more exclusive content throughout the week from around the world of motorsports. But for now, that's going to do it here on our debut on Shoutcast Online Radio for Speed77 Radio and Race Chaser Online. Tom Baker, Joel Sebastianelli, Stephen Ovens, Clint Miller, the cast of the Turn 5 Racing Podcast, James Pike, Kyle Souza, DJ Everett, and everybody that makes it happen behind the microphones and behind the glass. I'm Jacob Seelman, inviting all of you to check out Speed77 Radio on Facebook and Twitter for all the latest news updates, as well as RaceChaserOnline.com for exclusive news, views, and interviews from all around the world of motorsports. Until Thursday night for the Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports Show, this is Jacob Seelman, reminding all you race fans to keep it off the wall until we meet again, and we'll see you at the racetrack. So long, everybody, and good night.